Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of Module 6. In this session, we'll look at two novels by P. Shivakami, The Grip of Change and Author's Notes. We'll also take a look at two short stories by
Paul Chirakarod
and C. Ayyappan. So let's begin with the first novel, The Grip of Change by P. Shivakami. A former IAS officer and Dalit feminist writer, P. Shivakami is a well-known activist writing in Tamil. She has always raised her voice against social and political issues. As an IAS officer, she has served in various capacities, including as district collector of Tuticorin and Vellore. In 2003, she became part of the Dalit land rights movement and has witnessed how unfair the system is to those belonging to the scheduled caste. In an interview given to the Business Standard in 2016, she said, quote, "Bureaucracy has treated me like an untouchable." Quote unquote. She was moved by the social and political issues regarding the scheduled caste that she finally quit her position as a civil servant to become a full-time Dalit feminist activist. From 1995 onwards, she is closely linked to the literary journal Pudiya Kodagi and has continuously contributed in it regarding Dalit issues. Her first novel came in 1989 titled Pariyana Karidalum. It became a literary and commercial success, and finally, the author herself translated it into English under the title The Grip of Change, which came out in 2006. And it is the same novel that we'll be looking at in this session. Her second novel is Anandai, which was also translated into English, this time by Preetham K. Chakravarti as The Taming of Women in 2011. Her first poetry collection, Kadavadaipa, was published in 2011. Shivakami's works center around Dalit issues, especially violent treatment meted out to Dalit women in and out of their communities. It talks boldly about Dalit patriarchy. She also made a short film titled Udaha based on a story, which went on to win the President's Medal. Her notable works include Parayani Karidalum, Kurukuveta, Nalum Todarum, Kadaisi Mandani. The Grip of Change tells the story of Tangam, a Paraya woman. The novel begins with the ranting and cries of Tangam, who has been wronged for several reasons. She is a thrice marginalized woman, first for being a Dalit, then a woman, and finally for being poor. Such a woman has never been treated fairly by a society that is essentially patriarchal in nature. The novel thus aims at Dalit patriarchy in particular. Tangam is a Dalit widow, and she has no children. This makes her vulnerable before her so-called relatives who should be taking care of her. On the contrary, she is asked to submit herself before her brothers in law, and when she refuses to do so, when she refuses to please them, she is beaten up and tortured mercilessly. Besides, her demand for her husband's share is met with insult. She is refused her share on the ground that she could never bear a child and she is infertile. For a woman to lead a life of independence and dignity takes a lot of courage, and the path is filled with obstacles. Things can only get worse when the woman is a Dalit. Tangam works as a laborer in a farm for her livelihood. The farm is owned by Parenjyoti Udayar, who rapes her repeatedly. Out of fear, she keeps silent about the incident and he continues to take advantage of her silence. It's near impossible to imagine how hard it would have been for a woman to survive after going through these kinds of humiliation. Tangam, however, sums up courage and reports to Kathumuthu, a charismatic Paraya leader. She breaks down before him, pleading for help. Quote, Sami, these hooligans who beat me up, they should be jailed for at least a day and tortured. Quote, unquote. Now, Kathumuthu is a political leader who is aware of his image in politics. He is like a politician and is well aware of the do's and don'ts. Kathumuthu agrees to help her out and settles the affair between her and the landlord. But little does Thangam know that Kathumuthu entered into an agreement with the landlord and settled it outside the court. Not just that, he goes on to take advantage of this hapless woman who came to him for help. To the world, he appears as a savior who helped a desperate woman in need. To him, that image alone matters, and not the condition of the Dalit woman and all that she went through. But the issue gets worse with the police interference. From Tangam's personal troubles, a lot of other issues crop up. Issue of workers, their wages, prejudices, etc. The workers begin to demand a slight hike in their pay, which is met with disagreement from the landlords. The workers ask for a rupee hike and they end up getting a hike of 50 paise. But their happiness is again short lived when the landlords decide to make them work for extra hours for the extra money they're getting now. Quote, don't worry, we'll make them work for an extra hour. When we pay more, we have the right to demand more work from them. Quote unquote. And the list of injustice goes on, and the Dalits being tortured in different ways by the landlords. Meanwhile, in between all this, Tangam's matter gets sidelined and no one cares about her physical or mental health. She recalls it thus, quote, whenever she remembered her life in Pulia, she wept. She equated the incident in the sugarcane field with the repulsive experience of stepping on shit while walking on a riverbank. She could not recover easily from the troubles she had suffered. The shock of being dragged out by her hair in the middle of the night, to be beaten like an animal, had affected her mind deeply. She would gasp awake at night at the slightest sound. Quote unquote. The novel ends with Gauri, who is Kathumuthu's daughter, transforming as a symbol of change. She, in school, faces caste based discrimination. And by the time she grows up, Kathumuthu has lost his political charm and will and his career in politics. New leaders take up the role, and Gauri goes on to become a staunch critic of corruption, patriarchy, and polygamy of her father. As the novel ends, Gauri becomes the symbol of hope and change. The Grip of Change is a powerful novel for the reason that it does not show you a promising future, but it's a reality check. It shows you the exact condition or the plight of a Dalit woman who's been harassed so many times. It tells you how women's issues get sidelined when it comes to the mainstream. It tells you how hard is it for a Dalit woman to lead a life of independence and dignity. It tells you how nobody cares for the physical and mental state of a harassed woman. Probably these are the reasons why it went on to become a commercial success, because this novel worked as an eye-opener to the society. Now, the next novel is titled Author's Notes, again by P. Shivakami. Now, this novel could be considered a sequel or a part 2 to The Grip of Change, because this novel was actually written after 10 years of publishing The Grip of Change. And what she intends to do by writing this novel is actually a self-analysis, a self-criticism. She is trying to analyze how much things have changed, how much she as an author has evolved over these 10 years, and this is what she aims to do through this novel, Author's Notes. This came out in 1997. In her second work, she is constantly questioning the premises of her earlier work. In the former one, in the character of Gauri, one can read autobiographical elements because the author herself came from a Dalit community. She had to go through a lot of hardships before she obtained education, and when she became a college student, she went on to become a very strong political leader, just like Gauri, who's a very strong activist. The author herself was an active participant in politics during her college life. Thus, the author is trying to question and ponder upon her fictional representations of reality after a time period of 10 years in this work. She even returns to her village Puliar, where she meets one of her mother's cousins who reminds her instances from her childhood. Quote, your Kalimuttu Periyappa once said that you had stolen a 4 anna coin from his pocket. His wife went around announcing that to everyone in the street. Quote, unquote. Now, the character of Kalimuttu Periyappa appears in the former one as Kathamuttu. The author acknowledges the fictional representation of her oppressive father in her novel. The rebellious Gauri was her response to every humiliation and oppression she bore as a child. So, in a way, the grip of change was her way of responding, her way of reacting to everything she faced, everything she experienced, all sort of oppression she experienced from her father as a child. She says that she was particularly put off by two of her father's qualities, polygamy and coarseness. She says, quote, she had to provide answers to some questions. Was a polygamous man a sex addict? What was the novelist's opinion on fidelity and morality? Why were her male characters betrayers of women? What was the truth? Quote, unquote. The author, Shivakami, therefore was trying to analyze herself. How much has she grown? Was she able to find the answers to all these questions she had in her mind for quite a long time? Was she able to find them through her own written works? The author is trying to find the truth behind her characters. To a great extent, her first novel, The Grip of Change, could be a response to all the discriminations she faced from in and out of the community. After 10 years, she doesn't fail to recognize the good in her father. He, according to her, was a very hard-working man despite being financially sound. She looks back at her first work and doubts whether it served its purpose or not. She wanted her work to convey that exploitation is not just between upper caste and lower caste people. The Dalits could be mistreated by their own community members, and that's what she conveys through Kathamuttu's character. If you remember, Kathamuttu was the charismatic Paraya leader who, appears to have become the savior of Tangam, but he actually takes advantage of her. It's an intense self examination that the author is looking for in this novel. As the novel closes, and she poses quite a few questions that remains unanswerable. But one cannot forget the fact that she is constantly examining and re examining her own writings, acknowledging changes and moving on. Probably a very fine sign of a good writer. You can also, one might even wonder how many writers do act in this way, going back to their work and examining, analyzing the work they had written years before. I think Shivakami takes a step forward. I think she steps to another level itself by doing such an act, where she is able to open up about her characterization, about the representation, and she is trying to give a third person point of view. She's trying to be very objective in her observations by doing such a thing. So I think that you can even consider her being a very sensible writer that we have in Dalit literature. So thus we reach the last part of this Dalit writing. That's two short stories. Talking about short stories are loved all over the world because of its brevity. It requires craft, art, and skill to write a good short story since the writer has to grab the reader's attention in very few pages. When we consider the history of short stories, especially Dalit short stories in Kerala, one cannot move forward without mentioning the writer T.K.C. Vadadala, who popularized Dalit short stories in Malayalam. His focus was caste identity, and his short stories are remembered for the conflicts it brought out in a Dalit's life. He boldly spoke about issues that remained oblivious to the mainstream writers. Most of his works centered around the Pulaya community. His notable works include Jatiyada, that came out in 1964, Changrandiyada, that came out in 1959, and Randu Talamura, that came out in 1950. These are a couple of his noted works. Following his path, two writers came up with their interest in Dalit themes, and this was reflected in their short stories as well. They are
Paul Chirakarod
and C. Ayyappan. So the first short story we'll be looking at is by
Paul Chirakarod.
It's titled Nostalgia, and then we'll move on to C. Ayyappan's short story Madness.
Paul Chirakarod
Wrote about the conversion of Dalits into Christianity and the consequent conflicts and identity crisis a Dalit went through. His popular works include Olichu Pogunna Mankunagal and Nananya Bhumi. A native of Pathanamthitta district, his first work was published when he was 17. This was followed by a string of works, Pravasam, Avaranam, and Pulayathara, out of which Pulayathara is considered a masterpiece. Besides, he was also a biographer and wrote biographies on Bertrand Russell and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and many more. He was a very active participant in movements and protests related to the downtrodden people. He was one among the few leaders who led the Guruvayur Padayatra demanding abolition of discriminating feedings inside the temple. Similarly, he led the tribal march from Sultan Batheri to Trivandrum demanding land for the tribal people. This short story that we'll be looking at is titled Nostalgia by
Paul Chirakarod,
and it tells the condition of a Dalit who converts to Christianity so as to escape the tortures of Hinduism. But unfortunately, things are no different in the new religion of his choice. If a Dalit Hindu has converted to Christianity, he will not be viewed just as a Christian, but as a Dalit Christian. Whenever he goes in search of peace and dignity, he is denied that. Thus, the author takes on the hypocritical aspects of religion that claims to be accepting and egalitarian. If you remember the beginning sessions we had on Dalit writing, one of the writers we discussed, one of the social reformers that we discussed was Poigayil Yohanan. He was one of those early people who believed in conversion, who converted to Dalit, Christianity. But he was also one of those first reformers who spoke against the hierarchy, the caste hierarchy that exists within different religions as well. So even though conversion was something that was upheld by a lot of social reformers, by a lot of writers, people like Ambedkar, it is also a fact that even when a Dalit converts to a different religion, he still is considered as a Dalit in that particular religion. So nobody claims to, even though all these religions and all the system claim to be egalitarian, they're all hypocritical in nature. And this is a point that Paul Chirakarod is trying to put across through his novel Nostalgia. The second short story is by C. Ayyappan and it is titled Madness. He is noted for his themes and techniques that he employs while writing. His use of lunacy, possessed self, soliloquy are distinct and rare. His notable works include Nyandugal, Uchayurakkathile Swapna, and C. Ayyappante Kathagal. Now, a single narrator is often present in most of his stories. The story we look at carries a narrator too. His name is Krishnan Gutti. Just like what we discussed in Shivakami's novels, Ayyappan also tries to shift the reader's focus from the mainstream themes to not so popular theme in Dalit literature. he talks about Dalit elitism. Now, what is Dalit elitism? Just like we discussed in some of the modules and some of the writings in these sessions, this is a sort of hierarchy that exists within the Dalit communities. Even though they all are fighting against, everybody is struggling again to break down the caste hierarchy, there are hierarchies present within the community itself. So maybe a particular financially well off Dalit people who are Dalit, they would consider themselves superior to those from those who Dalits who are poor financially. So these sort of elitism exist within the communities, which is rarely talked about, which is rarely discussed. And that's where C. Ayyappan becomes significant and relevant, because he brings in all those less discussed topics into his works. Now, Madness is a story which is in the form of a monologue by Krishnankuti. He is a Dalit teacher who enjoys the privileges of the upper middle class. The crisis began when his friend asked help from him to admit Krishnakuti's sister in a mental asylum. He refuses to accompany his own sister to the asylum, fearing people who might then realize that he is a Dalit and his sister is mad. So, this is what is called Dalit elitism. They are trying to build an image, they're trying to put an image in front of other people. Here we have a narrator who is a teacher who enjoys the privileges of the upper middle class. He has a sister who is mentally ill. Now he refuses to accompany or take his sister to an asylum, fearing the fact that what would others think and say if they find out that he's a Dalit and that his sister is mentally ill. He's also worried what his fair-skinned wife and daughter would think. Krishnankuti is unfortunately a victim of a society that judges people on the basis of their skin color. He is subjecting to its norms, and to such an extent that he agrees to disown his mentally ill sister. Probably it is at this juncture that the reader himself gets an idea how insensitive people can become in the name of elitism, in the name of superiority, in the name of images that we all continue to build, to showcase in front of others. There is a point in the poem towards the end when his friend, who was asking for help in the beginning, put a rhetorical question in front of him. Krishnankuti, you too are mad? The friend thinks that Krishnankuti has to be mad to refuse to take his own sister, who's mentally ill, to the asylum. He has to be mad, or else how can a person refuse his sister? Which is a very sensible question. So C. Ayyappan carefully weaves a story that depicts the inhumanness and elitism that surrounds the Dalits.
As we come to a close of this paper, Dalit Writing, I would like to take you all back to the introduction we had, wherein I remember telling you how important it is for you students of literature to know and understand the significance of a genre like Dalit writing. I hope the pieces of literature that we discussed through this paper, be it the poetry, be it the prose, be the autobiographies, or be the fiction that we discussed in the last module. I hope, be the Dalit movements, the history of Dalit writing, be the Dalit movements, starting from that. I hope all these writings have given you an idea about how all this came into being and how significant is its existence and how hard do they fight to move forward. We don't have to look far for examples. We've had Rohit Vemula, we've had Madhu, the Adivasi who was beaten to death. We've had so many other cases in and out of our state which reminds us how important it is to look after our fellow beings. Dalits are also fellow beings. There is nothing called inferior and superior. And if this paper instills that belief in you, I think that would be a success. So as students of literature, make sure that you read up more about Dalit writing. You try to read autobiographies of these people so that you get a better idea about what exactly is happening around the world.
That's all. This was the last module in this paper, module 6. I hope this would be of some help to all of you. And as I always keep telling you, please feel free to comment your questions, doubts, or clarifications if you have in the comment box when the video is posted. So, thank you so much for listening all this time.